It is July. You walk out to the tomato plant you have been caring for since spring. And somehow, it looks better than ever. Taller, darker, fuller than it has looked all season. But underneath it, yellow flowers are scattered across the dirt. Not one, not two, the whole cluster. You watered it, fed it, did what good gardeners are told to do. But July can turn the right habits into the very reason the next flowers fall. The plant looks alive. The harvest is what is slipping. There is still time to save it, but not much. 5 mistakes. None of them feel like mistakes. And the first thing you need to understand is why a tomato plant can look perfectly healthy while it is already failing. Here is what most gardeners never consider. The flowers are not dropping because the plant is weak or neglected. They are dropping because the heat already damaged the pollen before the flower ever opened. When days stay consistently above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, or when nights stay above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, pollen begins to fail. It loses the ability to do its job. University of Missouri Extension describes this as pollen becoming non-viable under sustained heat. The fruit never sets because the process breaks down before it begins. The flowers look normal. They open on schedule, but something that was supposed to happen inside them already failed, and the plant gives you no sign that anything went wrong. Instead, it does what plants do under stress. It redirects. When fruit cannot set, the plant does not slow down. It pushes everything into leaves, more surface area, more structure, more visible growth. It is trying to survive the season. Alabama Cooperative Extension documented this directly. When fruit fails to set under heat stress, plants typically become more vigorous and dark green. That is the trap July sets. The plant that looks like your best season yet may be the one struggling most to produce any fruit at all. You were not wrong to water it. You were not wrong to feed it. The advice you followed was written for a different time of year. July does not ask for more. It asks you to stop doing the things that made sense in May. 5 mistakes. All of them feel like the right response when flowers drop. The first one is on the label of every fertilizer bag you have ever bought. Mistake number 1 starts with the label on the fertilizer bag. That first number, the nitrogen, it is there to make plants grow. Leaves, stems, height, everything you want from March through May. But here is what the label does not tell you. In July, that same nitrogen is instructing your plant to keep doing the one thing that is costing you flowers. Oklahoma State University Extension states it directly. Excessive nitrogen promotes leaf growth at the expense of blossom and fruit formation. The plant is not struggling. It is not confused. It is doing exactly what you told it to do. You just told it the wrong thing for this time of year. And there is a second layer most people never reach. When a plant is pushing hard into leaf production during summer heat, it is pulling resources away from every flower on the vine. Not one at a time. All of them. The more vigorous the leaf growth, the harder it becomes for any flower to hold. This is why a plant that looks strong in July, dense, green, growing fast, can drop flowers every single morning and show no signs of why. The problem is not visible. It is being written into the plant by what you are feeding it. Stop applying high nitrogen fertilizer when temperatures are consistently above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. If the plant needs feeding, wait. Wait until the heat eases and a fruit is already forming roughly the size of a golf ball. Then switch to something lower in nitrogen. A ratio like 5:1:0:5 moves the balance toward holding fruit instead of building leaves. That addresses the fertilizer. But the second mistake is quieter, and it is happening every time you pick up the hose, regardless of how much you use. Mistake number 2 is not about how much you water. It is about consistency. Water a little each day, or let the soil dry out and then soak it. Both patterns create the same problem. The roots never establish a steady rhythm, and a plant without steady water cannot hold flowers during a July heat wave. When the soil swings between dry and wet, the plant goes into stress response. It starts making decisions about what to keep and what to drop. Flowers are usually the first thing it lets go. There is also a second consequence most gardeners only notice after the fact. Calcium moves through a plant only with water. Utah State University Extension confirms most soils have plenty of calcium, but when water flow is interrupted, calcium never reaches the young fruit. The bottom breaks down. That is blossom end rot. And if the soil stays waterlogged, roots suffocate entirely. Flowers drop within hours. 1.5 inches per week. Deep. Mulch holds it steady. But the third mistake happens above the soil, and it only needs one night. Mistake number 3 sounds like good care. Watering in the evening. Giving the plant moisture overnight. The problem is what else benefits from that moisture. Fungal spores live in the soil around every tomato plant. They need one thing: wet leaves in the dark. A few hours overnight is often enough for spores to begin taking hold. Penn State Extension documents the result: early defoliation and fruit sunscald. When leaves drop ahead of schedule, the fruit loses its shade. Direct July sun hits the tomatoes that remain, and a plant already struggling with heat now has one less layer of protection. Septoria leaf spot, one of the most common culprits, thrives in mild, humid conditions. Across much of the country, July nights fall right in that range. Overhead watering makes this worse. Water hitting bare soil splashes spores upward onto lower leaves. The infection moves from the ground up. Water in the morning. Keep the hose at the base. Mulch stops the splash. But the 4th mistake removes something the plant cannot replace on its own. Mistake number 4 is one most gardeners feel good about: pruning. Removing suckers. Opening up the plant for airflow. That instinct is right in spring. In July, the same cut can leave your fruit exposed to something it struggles to recover from. When upper foliage is removed too aggressively, the tomatoes underneath lose their natural shade. Utah State University Extension research indicates fruit surface temperatures can exceed 105 degrees under direct July sun. The outer cells break down. A pale, leathery patch forms on the side of the fruit. Most of that fruit will not be usable. And a plant running hotter runs worse. Less chance of holding the next set of flowers. More heat stress on pollen that is already fragile. Prune from the bottom up. Clear everything within 12 inches of the soil airflow. Splash protection. Above that, leave enough canopy to keep fruit shaded through the afternoon. Open the base. Protect the top. But natural canopy has limits. The 5th mistake is about what happens when July heat exceeds what any leaf cover can handle alone. The 5th mistake is not something you are doing wrong. It is something most gardeners in July have simply never done at all. Every afternoon during the hottest hours of the day, flowers and fruit sit in full sun with no protection. The plant accumulates heat it cannot shed fast enough. By evening, pollen that needs to form overnight is already starting from a compromised position. Shade cloth, 30 to 40% density changes that. Utah State University Extension research found plants grown with shade cloth produce nearly 50% more marketable fruit. Fruit surface temperatures dropped 15 to 20 degrees. 30 to 40% still lets through enough light for photosynthesis. The plant works. It just does not overheat. Stretch it over a frame above the canopy, not draped on the plant. Cover from 11 to 4. Roll it back morning and evening. These 5 mistakes compound each other. Stopping all of them this week gives the next flowers a real chance. You are looking at your tomato plant differently now, not at the flowers on the ground. At 5 specific things you can change this week, most of them costing nothing but a decision. Stop the nitrogen during the heat. Water deeply and consistently. Move watering to morning. Prune from the bottom, not the top. Shade the flowers during the hours that matter most. July does not ask for more effort. It asks for different decisions. Most gardeners standing in front of a struggling plant will reach for a bag of fertilizer. You now know why that makes it worse. But these 5 mistakes only cover what happens in daylight. There is a 6th reason tomato flowers drop in July, and it has nothing to do with anything on this list. It does not happen in the afternoon. It does not happen while you are in the garden. It happens in the dark while the plant is doing something most gardeners have never thought to consider. And correcting the 5 mistakes in this video will not stop it. The next video covers what that 6th reason is and why 2 gardeners can do everything identically in July and still end up with completely different harvests by August. Which of these 5 was the one you did not know you were making? Leave it below. If you stopped all 5 and flowers are still dropping, that is the video you need next.